Hi, I'm Jazz Tankay, Senior Artisans Editor at Variety. What an incredible, thrilling ride it was. I'm so excited to be here today with the department heads of the film. So without further ado, let's meet our panel, starting with you, Andy.
I am Andy Jurgensen, the editor.
Florencia Martin, the production designer.
Michael Bauman, cinematographer.
Colleen Atwood, costume designer.
Arjen, Tuiten, prosthetics designer.
Chris Scarabosio, supervising sound editor and re-recording mixer.
I'm Tony Villaflor, re-recording mixer.
Incredible. As I said, I'm so excited to be here. Congratulations to you all on this incredible film. I mean, we wouldn't have this without you all. So what I want to say is, I was reading that Paul has said the collaboration is the best part of making a movie. The camaraderie that you feel, the people that you're collaborating with, the trust that you put in them, the way that you admire and hold each other up when you're tired and need support. It's a team sport for sure. How would you describe the collaboration with Paul on one battle after another? Andy, I'm going to start with you and then work along.
Well, I started working with Paul over 10 years ago. I was an assistant editor actually on Inherent Vice. And he's just kind of kept me in the family, over all the different movies and all the different projects. I feel, for all of us, you kind of get a sense of like what his sensibility is, and he has such a unique way of working with, the way we shoot on film and we review dailies, at the end of each night. I think he just really likes to surround himself with people who he really knows can be honest with them, but also knows his process, and it's just a very like family mentality, I would say.
What about you, Florencia? Because you've worked with him before too.
Yeah, I'd say it's very immersive and it's very boots on the ground, and it's a very deep collaboration between all of us as a team. And you start together early on with the script and start building it together, whether you're scouting or looking at reference films, reading books, and then that continues on as more department heads join. And so it's a really fulfilling and wonderful way of working that's really unique, I think, to Paul's sensibility, as Andy was saying, and also just always focusing on the story and the character as we're working. So it's really rewarding work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just say, I think all of us have a shorthand since we've done multiple projects with him, which is really valuable, especially going into something in the scale of scope of this particular production, because this is a lot larger than the last few movies that we've done with him. It's, as far as the whole thing. So it really helped that we had that familiarity when we came in, when we started it.
For me, it was baptism by fire, because I had never worked with Paul. And it was this movie, which, when I got the script, I thought was the best script I've ever read in my life. And I was immediately in love with the project, everything about it. And as we evolved and I got to know the team and we did all the testing and all the it all came together in a really great way. And then, of course, when you go on the road with a movie, you kind of become even more of a family than when you're all going home to your normal, semi-normal lives. Mm-hmm. So it really was a uniting old school experience for me. And seeing dailies at night I loved. I used to do it all the time in early years in New York with Jonathan Demme and people like that. So it was great revisiting that way of making a movie.
For me, it was a lot smaller of a part compared to all the talent here, but it was, very involved in the sense that Paul was very involved with what he wanted and in the makeup and even in the sculptural of it, the detail, the skin pores for the prosthetics, and so I loved his energy. It was also first time for me working with Paul, and we instantly just got along and understood what he was looking for, and I think he just gave me the time for what I needed to do and to get it right, so yeah. Absolutely great.
Nice. Yeah, I've worked with Paul. Goes back to Punch Drunk Love. So thinking back when that happened, and that was intense. And being in post production, it's a little slightly different in that we're not seeing them every day, but we talk a lot on the phone, with emails, and meet, talk about it, and do work and show it. And so, but over all these years, I think I have a pretty good sense of what he's looking for. So this being such a big production, definitely took a different approach to it, but it's definitely like a family kind of thing, and getting to know somebody over all those years is it's great. So I always enjoy working with Paul.
Nice. This was my first time working with Paul, but I found him super welcoming. And one thing I really appreciated about working with him was he would always give me the space to do my pass and kind of, let me try and craft something to what I thought was really cool. But then at the end, he would come and sit right next to me, and he would work through it with you to make sure that, you were ultimately getting to where the feel that he was looking for. So yeah, he was very collaborative.
I love that. Florencia, you mentioned scouting. I love how you found like all these different counties within California and kind of make, it's a character unto itself. Like, talk about location scouting and finding the right places to shoot as opposed to just shooting in Hollywood and,
Right.
LA, and finding like these really exciting places that we rarely see.
Well, the fundamental was the script. Like, we knew what our character's journey was. Like, we start 16 years before, and we have this revolution in a city. And then we cut to Bob, who's now up in the redwoods and has his journey through California to the desert. So our approach was really just starting from the beginning. And so our first scout was in Eureka, California, and we literally worked our way from north to south of the state and let each location tell us a story. And so that was an incredible way of making this film, was the fact that we learned so much from these towns. And a lot of it's not in the film, but it actually ended up informing the environment, the characters, sometimes the casting. There's a lot of people that we encountered that are in the movie itself. And then a lot of people who became their own experts, like a potter who built outhouses and redwood trees in Eureka, or sisters that we met in Merced who grow weed and were part of the character building for the mission. So it was I think the key part of how we scouted and how we chose locations was really building that tapestry through California and picking things that either were a surprise to us or that the script mandated, that became like a character on its own. And then from there we realized we also needed to continue exploring a bigger city, and that's how we got to El Paso. And so that became like a central environment for us, not only because it provided like a cityscape, but then it also became a character on its own with all the people that we met and the community there. So it was a really just way of building a film like I haven't done in the past, and I'm really grateful for that experience, that we were able to at times walk into a location like Perfidio's mother's house and say, this is absolutely perfect, like don't touch a thing because you can't make this up, it's like furniture that still has plastic on it with all of this Victorian Nouveau style. And then there was locations like Bob's house, which was an incredible setting, this cabin that was surrounded by redwoods and could protect him when he's hiding out. But we built that character with Paul and Leonardo DiCaprio and Anthony Carlino, our set decorator, to like bring in all the story of what it was like for Bob to be living in the woods for the last 16 years, what was his recluse lifestyle. So it was just nice to always be really in tune with, what we needed to do for the characters in the story.
Colleen, how closely are you and Florencia swapping notes, looking at, the whole sets as you build your costumes and build out these characters?
Well, I think in the beginning we had some of the locations when I started, and so that kind of influenced the colors. We knew what the light quality was going to be in different places and things like that influenced like color and stuff for me a lot. And then when we did the camera tests, both at Paul's house with Leo and Chase, Flo was there. So we always kind of saw what each other was doing in that way in the moment, and it just evolved. And those guys are always a little bit ahead of the rest of the team as far as decorating the sets and stuff. So by the time we got to El Paso, into the amazing set of Benizio's kind of Warren, I was a little bit behind because I hadn't like seen all that, and so I was scrambling to, get the people, get everything together. So I didn't see the set ahead of time. I saw it the first day, and I walked up there, and it was so great. It was so beautiful. The people just looked like they lived there. It was just like no effort, and there was a lot of effort, but it didn't look like it. It looked great.
When I spoke to you a while ago, I told Colleen, I was like, so many people are going to dress up as Bob Ferguson for Halloween, and they're going to come to screenings dressed up as Bob because it's so easy, and they did. Talk about crafting that look for Leo, and like how much of that was in the script versus, in fittings or like working with Paul. And
I think the character was in the script, and then, who he was. We had little sessions where I'd have a rail of kind of slacker clothes and like figure out what combinations we liked, what shoes. And then one of the sessions, the bathrobe came into play. Like the question is, when you do a movie like this, does anyone ever change their clothes? Why would you change your clothes if you're on the run, not thinking about it? So it's the costume, basically. And then maybe parts come off, parts come on. But it was something like, well, maybe he'll lose the robe, maybe he won't, and he just never lost the robe. Once it was there, it lived on.
Love that. Michael, Vista Vision, I mean, what a format to shoot in. What was your reaction when Paul said we're going to do this in Vista Vision, and how do you navigate that, especially when you're, shooting across these incredible locations? And
Yeah, a lot of it is having an incredible team because the format hadn't really been pushed in the way we were going to do it. A lot of times it's usually used for just, the camera sits on a tripod and you see a very beautiful location that you're shooting. And we were going to do the exact opposite of that. So it was, handheld, steady cam, strapping it to cars, all of that. And Paul, he shoots film, he shoots a lot of film. And so we had to have capabilities to run a lot of film through the cameras. So it was a lot about just having an incredible team who could also support this, because it was a bit of like, learning a lot of the idiosyncrasies of the system as we were making the movie.
Yeah. Vista Vision is noisy when you're shooting in that. How are you working with the sound of that in the post, or like?
Well, we definitely sent a lot of stuff to them to clean it up. There was, if I'm remembering correctly, Mike, right? Wasn't there some like blimps and stuff that were used for some of the shots?
Yeah.
I think like Willa in the bathroom.
That was a blimp. Yeah.
There was a special like case for the camera to kind of dampen the sound a little bit. But you saw to clean
I heard
it, right?
that wasn't used a whole lot, though.
Oh, right.
It was tough because it was such, one of the things with Paul is we shoot a lot of practical locations. There's not like a lot of built stuff from a stage perspective. It was really almost all location. And so when the blimp, which is like you said, the case that this goes in, automatically like triples the size of the camera and adds, so it's
massive, right?
Yeah.
It's
Very
already
quickly,
large.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You're very quickly transported back
You're
into
like,
the
no.
time period when they had those huge cameras. So yeah, it was a challenge, but yeah.
Well, Jose did a great job. He was
Yeah.
our production sound mixer. He just had mics everywhere. Got a really good, clean sound of everybody, and then you guys, used programs to basically try to carve stuff out, right?
Definitely some of the tools for cleaning up dialogue have gotten a lot better recently, but it's not really for camera noise because people don't really use film cameras anymore. So it's kind of a unique thing, but having various microphones helps a lot too. So each character has a lab, you got the boom, different other characters' microphones. So it's kind of getting rid of things that weren't helping and really kind of isolating the best of the performances and the microphones that were cleanest, and then kind of getting more forensic and really getting in there to get clarity on every word we possibly could.
Yeah.
It's something that we did actually in the tests, going back to what Colleen was saying. We did probably like 10 or 12 different camera tests throughout, for costume and lighting and the Vista Vision, but also we sent them some just production sound with the Vista Vision camera to see if they could clean it out, and they were able to. You were able to do a pretty good
Some
job.
of it, yeah. The stuff
So
that was like
we knew it would work.
inside, really close. It was like, please don't do that.
Well, talk a little bit about the sonic palette of this film and like how you built that and what you wanted that to sound like.
Well, yeah. So I started going. I met with Andy and Paul. Watched like the first 70 minutes of the movie, and I had just flown back from London, so I was kind of in this little out of it, and I was like, holy shit, this movie is clearly going to be amazing. So, you know, Paul's movies, you know, other than There Will Be Blood, like they're not always like a giant scope. You know, sometimes they're a little more personal, a little maybe, I don't think smaller is the right word, but like this, I could just tell the scope is going to be big. So, you know, the first thing I started thinking about was how can we, you know, really make this feel as cinematic as possible. And like one of the things Paul mentioned as we were mixing and as we were kind of getting prepared to mix was, let's make the screen as big as we possibly can. Which, you know, a lot of times he doesn't like to use all the speakers. So, I mean, Punch Drunk Love, we spent 3 days making a mono movie instead of a 5:1 movie, which we ended up back to. But he you know, like he does like the idea of keeping things fairly discreet and kind of like somewhat old-timey. But this had a different sense of scope, and I think he really wanted to. Once we started leaning into it, he was like, "Yeah, let's keep doing that."
Tony?
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely got a specific taste and aesthetic that strikes me as very like 70s, very like old school. And there was, you know, a challenge to try and keep that real, that kind of old school vibe and that kind of patina to it, but also, like Chris was saying, like make it bigger, kind of really kind of push it a little further, but not use the same like, you know, Hollywood big action movie kind of, you know, tools that you would use. So kind of pushing it to that next level, making it bigger. We mix in Dolby Atmos, and there was a big IMAX release. So he was super aware that, you know, we were going to be mixing in these really big sound formats. So pushing it to that next level, but also keeping his, you know, aesthetic alive through all that.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to let you get away without not talking about Colonel Lockjaw. When I saw you join this film, the first thing going through my head was like, what is happening in this movie? Like, you know, then we see it, and you're like, oh, that's what he did. Talk about creating that look.
Well, it was I was on another shoot and another film project, and they reached out, and I just had a personal chat with Paul and Sean, and of course, anything that involves prosthetics and makeup is very personal, and Paul was pretty clear on what he wanted, and Sean kind of chipped in with some ideas, and we did some concept work, and I started the sculpture right away, really. We only had one camera test, but it was a good one. Paul was there, and we just discussed the little adjustments that we wanted to make, and Sean, I just loved watching Sean in the mirror, just starting to play with that character, and yeah, it was just great seeing it come to life, really. Yeah.
How many pieces or hours is it?
Oh, actually, the makeup itself didn't take that long. I think it was about 30 minutes. There's a cheek prosthetic, a dental piece, then a second dental piece for his white teeth, and then a brow prosthetic with a half punched individually, eye like hair brows punched in. So that's quite time consuming. But the makeup itself didn't take that long, actually, and I enjoyed working with Sean and watching him just getting into character, which is the best part, really.
And then you got him in his colonel outfit, Colleen.
Of course, yeah.
So funny. I remember one day Sean, like we just finished, like on stage somewhere, and I see Sean leaving in his truck, and he gives me a wave, and I go, bye, you know, and then I go, wait, he's got his costume on.
That's your lockjaw.
The colonel.
He was heading out as lockjaw.
Oh my gosh. Taking method acting to a whole new level. Andy, I've got to talk to you about the beginning because it really drops us in and it's fast-paced dynamic. Like, talk about finding that opening in the edit.
Well, yeah, I mean, the entire, prologue, we're trying to tell so much. We're setting up the cast of characters, we're setting up the French 75, we're setting up the dynamic between Lockjaw and Perfidia. But we've also got to do it in a pretty quick way because there's going to be a whole, second portion of the movie that we haven't even gotten to yet. So it was really just kind of threading that needle of trying to make really like dynamic cuts and seeing what we could, how we could, maybe take the end of scenes off or use sound to kind of just like propel you just, through this kind of history of the French 75. And so it's just kind of, started out long and we were whittling it down. And actually, I do remember I think we gave you the prologue in its like longer form to actually do like a sound pass, including that first car chase, which really, I think, helped just figure out just like the feeling of the prologue.
It was kind of like our version of a camera test. It was like, like I had an idea and I knew it was kind of different than what we'd done in the past. And it was like, let's take this first bit of the movie because there's plenty here to dig into and see if you're kind of on board with this.
Yeah.
And it went very well. And
it's kind of like its own movie in a way, like the prologue. And it has like, beginning at the end and then kind of leading into the 16 years later. So it was, it went through a lot of versions, but I think we got it to the right length.
And also, like, what's so exciting about the opening sequence at the border camp is that Paul had, I think, a really clear vision of the blocking and how the French 75 were going to meet for the first time. We had pretty much rehearsed it beforehand. And so it was a really exciting space to design and like work together because everything was practical. So we really did a lot of research on what these camps were like and knew that Perfidia was going to access the camp from the back and the other half of the group was going to come from the front. And then we realized, we should meet them beforehand. Right. So we found that location up at the top of the hill that really sets up the scene of where we are at the border. And so it's like the nice way of kind of working with a location and working with the script and working together of seeing, and the nice part of having dailies of just like the fact that we get to like review the work as we're going and see what's working and continue that process. But the camp was really exciting in that way because we knew too, like the mission was to get Lockjaw. And so the fact that even when we first get to a location, Paul tends to like shoot a lot on his phone and set up the shot. So we knew that like Perfidia was going to be up on that bridge looking down. And I also love what she's wearing in that moment. It's like such a beautiful like introduction to like the whole setting of the tone of the film. So
yeah, it's amazing too that you guys were able to shoot just right like on the edge of the wall. Too.
I know that
really
shot of the wall.
Yeah.
It's like, holy shit, that's the wall.
Yeah, at times we didn't know who was like border. Yeah, it was pretty impressive. Yeah. But it was the access road for the trucks coming in from Mexico into the United States, and so that became part of the texture and character of it too, because we had like these big semi trucks with lights shining coming through in the scenes, and then it goes from day to night, and then we had like a practical, firework display. So the fact that they gave us that's a big teamwork too with our location manager, Michael Glazer, and his whole team. So.
Yeah, I want to shoot all these fireworks off right next to the border.
But that's great too. Is just the fact that we tend to do everything in camera and practically, and the fact that like it just does take this huge team effort, and everyone who comes with like ideas of seeing a video of fireworks displays on YouTube of the way these people would have done it on their own, and then you expand from that, and then you have an expert who's teaching the actors how to plant those in the ground, and I don't know, it's just like a really wonderful experience.
How many people did you have to let know that you were going to be doing that?
I don't know the answer to that question, but I feel like...
Never mind.
Yeah. And then we have the great Adam Sumner, who kind of
legend.
the general that really made it physically
Yeah.
move forward with Paul.
Yeah.
I mean, logistically, the movie was a jigsaw puzzle, and he really was genius at just keeping it going like nothing. It was just normal to do all this stuff, and it was like really like amazing to see him work as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, it is such a great opening and sets everything up. But we've got to talk about the Highway 78, finding that location, filming it. It is one of the best. You know, we've been discussing at work, being like, it's definitely one of the like best car chases in so long. But talk about finding that and then filming. The way you film that, especially when you watch it in IMAX and you sit in, or like even in Vista Vision, when you're sitting in the right place, you literally feel like you're in that ride with them. So,
Well, you know, we had scouted for about 2 years, and we knew we needed the desert, and we actually had gone up through Bishop, and we were in Anza Borrego. There was a place called the Box Canyon. We were just searching, and we knew we needed the camp for the 1776, and we wanted one element of water, the Rio Grande, and Michael Glazer found this recreational camp, and he was like, it's far, it's 3 hours from LA, it's at the edge of Arizona. We're like, let's go. So we got in all together. I think it was Michael Bauman, Paul, Michael Glazer, and myself, and Adam. And we went off, and this location was fantastic. It was completely arid. You had the mountains and the river, and then we were pulling out, looping back an hour and a half to Borrego Springs, and suddenly the highway just started to undulate, and then it got rised and fell further, and like Paul took his phone out, and we were like, oh, this is amazing. And that's just kind of like the birth of what we call the River of Hills, that it was such an inspiring location. And you could see, you know, Paul's gears turning, and I think he came back a bit later with pages and had written out this sequence. And then it evolved just from like every location on the film. I think we would revisit all of these cities 5 to 10 times. So it just goes in levels of like a small team to bringing on more department heads, then to camera testing. So it's you're always like studying and trying to make it better and understanding. That road runs north, south, east, west, so it had its like challenges. Of course, shutting down a major highway, like a huge collaboration with everybody involved. But the rigs for that are incredible.
I mean, it started with what Flo said. It was just like iPhones in the back of, you know, a van, and just seeing with the stunt, Brian, the stunt coordinator, just like driving another car and just seeing like what that looks like. And then we did some tests where we looked at some of the stuff that a company called Alan Padelford, and he runs like a high-speed car company, which they had a lot of different variations, an arm car, and this car that had an elevator rig, which you could get the camera like almost right down to the ground. And so we did some tests with that, and just to kind of see kind of lensing-wise what works. And then when we took it out there, it was, you know, because it was a very, you know, structured process of locking down the freeway, and then getting the hero cars out there, and then the picture, you know, the camera cars out, and then we're riding all in a Suburban, you know, bouncing around. Orange cop car, yeah. So we're all getting the full experience, going up and down at the same time. Yeah, and then you're watching on a small screen. The interesting part was when we were watching on a small screen, and we're seeing some of the opportunities to come up, and some of the focus pulls that Serge, our first AC, was doing, and you can tell they were dynamic, but you're looking on something that's this big. And then when we'd see it in dailies, it would be just like, wow, okay, this is pretty cool. And then when he started to play, or I think he maybe had some preliminary scores from Johnny then.
Yeah, I think
it kind of
really
like
early days.
It was early days.
It even could have been like some other piece of score.
Yeah,
kind of had
it was kind of the mood for it. Yeah,
yeah, the kind of percussive. You know, driving kind of music that would eventually become like multi-layered. But yeah.
And I think the thing of us being able to look at the work at the end of every day, or, you know, see what we did the previous day, was really critical for just, you know, seeing what we needed, this kind of thing, you know, and you guys, I mean, obviously with just all of it, with the sound and how it got cut together is just, it's a really amazing section.
I will say, like, one really interesting thing that I remember when we were in dailies is, like, Paul wanted to make sure that the shots were not super smooth or like steady. Like, remember? And he kept being like, isn't there a way to just like unscrew one of the bolts so that it kind of has that like shaky look? Because if it's too clean, people would just think it's not real, or it's green screen, or it just wouldn't feel like organic. So there was, I remember we even reshot some stuff, especially on Willa's face, because you want that kind of like shaky feeling, or even her point of view. And we always, even when we were editing it together, we always were like, we want it to be like just on the verge of like a little bit of motion sickness, right? Just hitting that line, not to be too much, but just you wanna feel something. You wanna feel that feeling when you were sitting, you know, in the IMAX perfect spot of like really feeling like you were going up and down. So if it was too clean or too steady, it would have felt just too artificial. So that was like something we always were like thinking about.
And that was like the ethos of the whole film, I would say, like definitely in the design, and I think the everything in cinematography, it's like constantly we were discussing like, how do we not make this polished? How do we keep this grounded? And because you really want to be with these characters and you want to feel like you're in this world with them.
Yeah, so much of the visual language is, you know, we looked at a lot of stuff early in the process, like French Connection, Last Detail, a lot of the 70s, rough 70s, you know, cinema that was really just about going out and doing it. And that was kind of the ethos of just going to some of these places and being like, okay, we're just going to embrace what's here and build from that.
Incredible. Sadly, that is all we have time for. We could talk about this film all day long because there's so much to unpack. But I want to say thank you so much for that insight into your work. Congratulations on everything, one battle after another. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in today.